Good Tuesday morning, everyone. Schuyler Callihan here with another episode of Between the Ears. Thank you guys for tuning in here on Mountaineers Now. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel and give us a thumbs up. Ryder Burton, a new West Virginia quarterback, is in the mix now. They landed the former BYU quarterback over the weekend out of the transfer portal. And as I've told you guys, felt like it made a lot of sense to go out and get a third quarterback. Now, Khalil Wilkins, technically the incoming freshman, would be that third guy, but one, we don't know what his status is at this moment because he was dealing with a bunch of stuff with his transcripts when he transferred high schools, and that was a big reason why he was not able to come in the winter/spring, so his enrollment got delayed. And two, you don't want to count on a true freshman to be your third string quarterback if you don't have to. Doesn't mean that you can't, but this is I think a really smart signing by West Virginia because it does many, many things. First of all, it gives you insurance for 2024. You don't know what's going to happen with Garrett Green in terms of health or Nico, but you would assume that they're going to be healthy. However, as we saw last year, things can change in an instant. And if Garrett Green were to happen to go down, all of a sudden, Nico's your guy, and then you have what would have been Khalil Wilkins, a true freshman, one snap away from being your quarterback. So going out and getting somebody that has a little bit of college experience, not very much, didn't play any games, but has been through this process before for a year. And I think just is somebody that understands maybe a little bit more than what a true freshman would. Makes a ton of sense. I thought there was going to be two ways to do this. You either go out and get somebody that's a guy that has 1 year of eligibility left and just really doesn't care, that he's a backup and is fine with that and just wants to continue to be playing football. Or you go out and get somebody with multiple years of eligibility left. That way, it not only takes care of this year's depth issue, but it also gives you another option moving forward because next year it's Nico Marchiol's job to lose. And yes, it is that. Nico Marchiol's job to lose. And it still is. So let's not get into this conversation now of, well, Ryder Burton's the future QB of West Virginia. Now, that may be true, but it's not going to be next year. I wouldn't think. It's going to be further on down the line. And if you kind of look at what West Virginia is doing with these quarterbacks, they're taking their good old time with developing them, grooming them, and making sure that they're ready to be a starting quarterback. Neil has said it several times before. You cannot put a quarterback into the game, even as a backup, if he's not ready. Now, again, some instances you don't have really much of a choice, but if you can help it, don't put the guy in. Quarterbacks are fragile. That's just what it is. You put them in, they don't do well, destroys their confidence. Sometimes those guys never come back. Other positions, it's not necessarily the case. Maybe to some degree, but when you're shouldering the load of an entire offense and sometimes an entire team, it's a lot of weight that you're carrying. So getting Ryder Burton, again, not only helps this year's depth, but ensures moving forward that you have infused competition into that quarterback room. You're not just going to hand over the job to Nico Marchiol, even though that's essentially what they will be doing. But you're at least giving him somebody to work with that has a chance, because Burton will then have 2 years under his belt in college, whereas Wilkins will have only had 1. That's assuming he still makes it to West Virginia. And I just think it's the smart thing to do. You don't want to have a situation where it's just, here you go, Nico, it's yours. It's nice to do that, and it's probably what will happen. But the more that you can challenge Nico, the more that you can challenge that room, the better that room is going to be. Now, I also will say, I really like this Scotty Fox kid that's committed in the 2025 class. And personally, I think he's probably got the highest ceiling of the three in terms of himself, Burton, and Khalil Wilkins. So, with that being said, Ryder Burton coming into play now doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be here 3 years from now when he's got a chance to compete for the job. There's no two-time transfer rule anymore. So he can transfer again and free of worry that he's got to sit out or anything like that. There's not going to be any restrictions. So is this a kid that's going to be willing to be patient, willing to wait his turn as Garrett Green did, as Nico Marchiol is currently doing? Now, Neil can easily just go, hey, look, Garrett waited his turn. Look what happened. And then next year, Nico, when he gets his turn, he can say the same exact thing. But all these kids are different. Their patience levels are different. If he's not feeling it and he's feeling pressure from either Khalil Wilkins or Scotty Fox, it's a pretty crowded quarterback room. How can he separate himself? How can he differentiate himself to say, I am your guy as soon as Nico leaves? And if he feels like that's maybe not quite feasible, then he can move on again. So, although it's nice in theory to think that you have Garrett for one more year, you have Garrett or Nico for 2 years, and then after that, you've got maybe Ryder Burton who's been sitting there and developing for a few years underneath of those two guys. That sounds like a great succession plan. But the reality is, one of these guys is not going to stick around. Whether it be Scotty Fox when he gets here, Ryder Burton, or Khalil Wilkins. They're all too talented. I'm not saying they're all going to be power four starters, but they're all going to think they are because they committed to that to a power four school. So if they don't start within a couple of years, they're going to start getting a little impatient. One of them's going to leave. It's just the way it works. But I don't think this, again, is a threat to Nico Marchiol. This is 100% his job to lose. And I think they've told him that. I think they've been transparent with him throughout this whole process. When Sean Boyle entered the portal, they probably said, hey, look, Nico, we're going to have to go get another quarterback because we can't have, essentially two scholarship quarterbacks on the roster this year. Essentially, not knowing what Khalil's situation is. We've got to go get another guy, but this does not affect you as of now. And I'm sure that was probably the same conversation that they had with Ryder in that, hey, we're going to bring you in, but this is going to be more of a long haul vision for you. This isn't going to be you're coming in, competing for a starting job now, obviously, or potentially maybe not even next year. This is going to be a long haul thing where we groom and develop you to be the guy, just like we did with the last two guys. Now, as far as the guys in his talent is concerned, I like what I've seen, but there's a lot to work with. And there's a lot to work on. Very raw prospect, has really good arm talent. He can really sling the rock. He can throw off balance. He can throw across his body. Can make just about every throw. The mechanics, the footwork at times can be a little sloppy. Um, I think sometimes he bails a little bit too early in the play and uses his feet. Now, he's not a run first quarterback by any means, but I do think there are some plays on tape that you look at and say, maybe if he just holds on just a half a second longer, probably could have thrown the football. But you're going to get that with high school quarterbacks. So I think there's a lot. There's a lot of potential here with this kid, but he's got a long ways to go. In some ways, not necessarily as the player and exactly his style, but just kind of where they're at coming into the program really does remind me a whole hell of a lot of where Garrett was when he came to West Virginia. Just a really good athlete, hardworking competitor that just needs a lot of TLC. And sometimes that's okay. Obviously, it worked out for Garrett, and I think it can work out for Ryder too. But fans have got to know that this is going to be a long-term thing, and this is going to be a patience thing for both sides, both for Ryder and for West Virginia. But it can work out and be just as successful as Garrett did. So that's going to do it for me here today on Between the Ears. I'm Schuyler Callihan. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page at Mountain Ears Now. Give us a like and go over to X and give us a follow at the same handle. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back here tomorrow morning for another episode. Take care.